Hi, it's Krista at The Secret Yarnery. Today we are making this gorgeous bouquet of flowers. This easy crochet flower bouquet is so easy to make, really quick. Just uses little tiny scraps of yarn and looks fantastic in any vase anywhere around your house. Even if you didn't want to put these onto a skewer or onto a knitting needle onto a stem, you could also just use them as flat decorations on any sort of project that you're making. You can also make these flowers into granny squares. I will link that tutorial up in the card, as well as the description box down below. The possibilities are endless. To make these easy crochet flowers for your bouquet, I'm using 4 different colors of yarn for my flower and 1 color for my leaves. So green plus 4 different shades or colors. Any different color combination that you like. I am using Favorite from Ice Yarns, which is linked in the description box down below. You will also need a bunch of knitting needles, just these cheap wooden ones if you have them or you can find them. If not, look for a big bunch of barbecue skewers. These are just bamboo barbecue skewers from my grocery store. Really cheap. You get them in a pack of 100 for like $1.50 or something like that. And then you can just glue a cute little button or a bead on to the end of them, that flat end right there. I just used a hot glue gun and glued a cute button on to the top of them. And this way you can get a whole bunch of centers for your flowers or a whole bunch of flower stems for just $1 or $2. I'll be using a 5mm crochet hook. You'll need a needle for sewing in your ends, a pair of scissors. Some little baby elastics are also handy. These are from a Magic Loom kit, but you can also buy them as hair accessories in some hair shops. But any small little elastics are handy. And let's get started. To start making your flower, grab your center color, and we're going to start with a chain 3, but you can also start with a magic ring if you are more comfortable with that, but I'm going to be showing you how to do both ways. So for the flower, I'm going to join with a chain 3 and make that into a ring, and for the leaves, I'm going to do a magic ring. In a perfect world, you could do both with a magic ring. It'll be easier for you to make your flower later. So magic ring if you prefer, and if not, a good old standard chain 3. So just make your slip knot and pop it onto your hook. You want to leave a long enough tail. We need to sew that in later. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and slip stitch into that very first chain we made to join. Just pop your hook into that very first chain. Now you don't have to worry about your tail. We need that for sewing, so you can just drop your tail and slip stitch to form a ring. Now I'm holding it open with my finger and thumb, so don't let go of that, and chain 1. Now into the center of this ring, we're going to do 12 double crochets. So just ignore your tail. We're not working over it. Just do 12 double crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, and if you run out of space, you can grab your stitches and your ring and slide those stitches back. That'll give you more space to get all of your double crochets lined up around your ring. So you can pause the video and keep working along. 12 double crochets into the center of that ring. So there's my 12 double crochets. We're going to slip stitch into the top of that first double crochet to join. Right there, we're going to slip stitch to form a ring. And chain 1 to secure your yarn. Now cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. Now this tail we can sew in. If you did a magic ring, you are also going to want to be sewing in your tail. So thread your needle. And now I'm just going to go underneath those loops around the edge of my ring. Just like that, and now give it a pull. See, that will close that right up. And now sew in your tail in the opposite direction. Going back the other way. There, just like that. So that closed up the center of our flower. And that finishes the first color. To start the second color, or to start our petals, we're just going to look for where our join is. So our join is right here. I'm going to work like one stitch ahead of it. So I'm skipping this little baby stitch right there. I'm working in to the front loop one stitch ahead, right there. So pop your hook in just to that front loop. So there's only going to be one loop on your crochet hook. Loop of your first petal color on your hook. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail, just leaving it where it is, and chain 1. So this counts as our first chain 2, and now make 2 double crochets into that same stitch, or that same front loop. 1 and 2, and chain 2. 1 and 2. So we're going to slip stitch into that very same stitch, or that very same front loop, to finish our petal. So there's our first petal. So to make your petal, this is what we're going to do all the way around. We're going to do this 12 times in total. We're going to be working into these front loops, just the front loop. So into the next front loop only, we're going to slip stitch, chain 2, 1 and 2, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and chain 2, 1 and 2. So now we're going to slip stitch into that same front loop to finish our petal. So we're going to do that into each front loop all the way around. So into the front loop, we slip stitch, chain 2, 1 and 2, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and chain 2, 1, 2, and slip stitch to finish that petal into the very same front loop. Slip stitch to finish. So now you can pause the video and keep working around, making a petal into each front loop all the way around. You'll have a total of 12, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. After you've made your 12 petals all the way around, we're just going to slip stitch to finish it up. So I've slip stitched to finish my last petal, but now we're going to slip stitch over into our first petal to join. So I'm just going to go right after that leg into the first petal, just to join it up. One little slip stitch and chain 1. Just like that. Now flip your work over. We want to be looking at the back of our work, and we want to be looking for our back loops now. So for each petal, there is a back loop for each petal. So I'm going to go into this back loop here, the back loop of the next petal, and we're just going to slip stitch right into that back loop just to get started. So slip stitch and chain 1. Our tail is right here, so I'm just going to put my tail right to the back and just kind of hold it out of my way. And now 2 half double crochets into that very same back loop right there. 2 half double crochets. So there's 1 and 2. So just pinching those petals down so I can see those back loops. The next back loop is right there. So 2 half double crochets into the next back loop. 1 and 2, and 2 half double crochets into each back loop all the way around our flower. So just keep folding those petals down and making 2 half double crochets into each back loop. Just like that. So pause the video and keep working around. 2 half double crochets into each back loop. So you'll have a total of 24 stitches, but don't worry about it. It's a flower, and this one doesn't have to line up at the end. We are just putting it on a stem. So 2 half double crochets into each back loop all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back to where we started, you can just count where you worked in at the back. So just make sure you've gone into 12 different spots. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Then we're going to slip stitch to the top of that first half double crochet to join right there. We're going to slip stitch to join. So just slide your hook in 2 strands of that stitch on the top of your hook and slip stitch. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, just leaving a little tail like that. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. Now you have these 2 tails right here. You can choose to sew them in, or you can choose to knot them. If you are using an acrylic yarn, I suggest just giving them a little knot and getting them out of the way. So to do that, just a regular school knot. 1, I don't pull that hard, and 2. Now you can try to snug that down. If it slips, let go and make 1 more knot. See, I didn't make it very tight. I'm just holding those tails together at the back. Nobody is going to see this, but you do want it washproof because, of course, these flowers are removable and washable. And you can also sew in your tails if that is what you would prefer to do. And that finishes the second color. To start the third color, so grab your next color, and we know where we joined, right there. So I'm going to join into the front loop about 1 stitch ahead of that join. Just so if I have to adjust my stitch count, if I made a mistake, I can fix it right where that join is. It's already a little bit messy, so all my mess is going to be in one area if I need to make a mess. So into this next front loop right there, I'm just going to slide my hook in. Loop of my new yarn on my hook. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail and chain 1. So that counts as my first chain 2. Into the very same front loop, 1 double crochet. And into the next front loop, right here, I'm going to finish my petal into the next front loop. So for this round, we're doing the same petal but into 2 front loops. So starting with a chain 2 and a double crochet, and into the next front loop, we're going to end it with a double crochet and a chain 2 and a slip stitch. So same petal but into 2 front loops. So to start the petal into the next front loop, we slip stitch, chain 2, and 1 double crochet. To finish our petal into the next front loop, 1 double crochet, chain 2, and slip stitch. So we're going to do that all the way around this round. So to start your petal, slip stitch, chain 2, and 1 double crochet. To finish your petal into the next front loop, 1 double crochet, chain 2, and slip stitch. So now you can pause the video and keep working along, doing the same petal into 2 front loops all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back to where you started, just make sure you have done 12 petals. And we're going to slip stitch again into that very first stitch we made, just to finish up our round. Right into that first stitch, slip stitch, and chain 1. Now flip your work over. We want to be looking at the back for our back loops. So our back loops are just here waiting for us all the way around our work. So I'm just going to go into this back loop right here. So get your working yarn behind you, that'll help, and go into that back loop right there and slip stitch to get started. And chain 1. And we're going to do half double crochets for this round. So into the first back loop, right where we started, 1 half double crochet. Get that tail behind. And into the next back loop right here, we're going to do 2 half double crochets. So wrap your yarn and 2 half double crochets. 1 and 2. Into the next back loop, 1 half double crochet. 1, and into the next back loop, 2 half double crochets. So we're just going to go around alternating, doing 1 half double and then 2 half doubles into each back loop all the way around. So 1 half double and then into the next 2 half doubles. So you can pause the video and keep working around. 1 half double into the first back loop and 2 half doubles into the next, all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. When we get back to where we started, we're just going to slip stitch into the top of that first real half double crochet to join. So slip stitch to the first real half double crochet to join, chain 1, and cut your yarn, just leaving a bit of a tail. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. Again, you can knot your tails, or you can knot them all later, or you can sew them in. There we go. And that finishes our third color. To start our last row of petals, or our fourth color, grab a loop of your yarn, and again, right where we have joined, we're just going to join our new color about 1 stitch ahead, and just into that front loop only. Same as we were before. So into that front loop, loop of our new yarn, bring it through, slip stitch with both strands, drop your tail, and chain 1. So that counts as our chain 2. So to start our petal, into the very same front loop, 1 double crochet, into the next front loop, so into this next stitch right there, we're going to do 2 treble crochets. So that is the new middle of our petal. 2 treble crochets into the next front loop. There is 1 and 2. And to finish our petal into the next front loop, right there, 1 double crochet, chain 2, and slip stitch. So for this round, we're doing the petal, our beginning the same, our middle is 2 treble crochets, and our ending is the same. So we are doing a petal into 3 stitches, or 3 front loops. So to start your petal, slip stitch into the next front loop, chain 2, 1 and 2, and 1 double crochet. Wrap your yarn twice into the next front loop. Just slide that front loop on your hook, 2 treble crochets, 1 and 2, and to finish your petal into the next front loop, 1 double crochet, chain 2, and slip stitch. So those are our last petals we're going to be doing. So you can pause the video and keep working ahead. Slip stitch to start, chain 2 and 1 double crochet. Wrap your yarn twice into the next 2 treble crochets. 1 and 2. And finishing your petal with a double crochet, chain 2, 1 and 2, and a slip stitch to finish it off. So pause the video and keep working around, doing your petal into 3 different stitches with 2 treble crochets for that middle stitch all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. When you have made your 12 larger petals, we're going to slip stitch the same as we did before to finish. So just slip stitch to that first petal and chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, just leaving enough tail to give it a knot or to sew it in. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. Now you can take these 2 tails and give them a little bit of a pull. We want the knot to be on the back side. So we want it to be right where that first tail is, not the one we just finished. So tug it down to that side, just loosely. See if it's going to stick. You can always give it a 3rd tie and then really, really pull it. Make sure it doesn't slip. If it's slipping, you need to add 1 more knot, just like that. Cut your tails or sew them in, and you are ready to assemble your flower. To make the leaves, we're going to start by making a magic ring. To make a magic ring, just lay that tail over your non-dominant hand and just hold it down on your ring finger with your thumb. Wrap the yarn around 2 fingers, making an X, and wrap it around your whole hand, just touching it underneath your thumb again. Tip your hand over. You will have a short strand and a long strand. Slide your hook side facing down, underneath the short strand, grabbing that long strand and bringing it through, pointing the hook towards yourself, relaxing your thumb a little bit so that yarn can slide. Grab that long strand, turn your hook, releasing your thumb a little bit, turning your hook to bring it through that loop. So that is a magic ring. I will link a tutorial for that up in the cards. If you can't do a magic ring, if it's really hard for you, you can do a chain 3 ring, but then leave a long enough tail to sew that ring shut when we are done. That's going to help keep our flower up on our stem. So chain 1, and we're going to work around our ring, going over our tail. And we're going to do 12 double crochets. So 12 double crochets into the center of that ring, taking care to go over our tail. So there's 1, 2, 3. So now you can pause the video and keep working forward. 12 double crochets into the center of the ring, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. So there is my 12 double crochets. Now to count your double crochets, we're not counting that chain 1. That doesn't count as anything. We're counting our first real double crochet right there. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So make sure you have 12 and then grab your tail and really, really get that shut. If you're using acrylic, it's great. We can really make it nice and tight. We want that center to completely close. And then leave your tail. We're going to have to sew that in later. And now to the top of that first real double crochet, the first one that we did right there, that is where we're going to slip stitch. So into the top of that first real double crochet, slip stitch to join, and chain 1. Now into that very same stitch right here, we're going to do 2 double crochets. So wrap your yarn and into that very same stitch. Here's our first double crochet. There's 1. Wrap your yarn and into that very same spot, our second double crochet. just like that. Into the next stitch right here, 2 double crochets. And we're going to do 2 double crochets into each stitch all the way around our circle. So into the next stitch, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, and into the next stitch, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. So now you can pause the video and keep working around 2 double crochets into each stitch all the way until we get back to where we started. Just like that. So we have 24 stitches around our ring again, or our second round has 24 stitches. And we're going to slip stitch to the top of that first real double crochet to join. Right there is our first real double crochet. So slide your hook in and slip stitch to join. And chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to skip 2 stitches. So skipping 1 and skipping 2, we're going to go into number 3 right there. So into the third stitch, 1 single crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, skip 2, 1 and 2, into the third right there, 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet. So we're just making these little loop, these little spaces around the edge of our ring. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, skip 2, so we're skipping those 2, working into the third, 1 single crochet. So you can pause the video and keep working along, doing a chain 2, skip 2, single crochet into the third, all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. When we get back closer to where we started, I've done my single crochet, so just do your chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and now we're going to slip stitch into that very first chain right there to join. So into that chain, 2 strands of the chain on the top part of your hook, and slip stitch to join. And turn your work. Wrap your yarn and into that very first space, 1 half double crochet, 1 double crochet, 1 treble crochet, so wrap your yarn twice, 1 treble crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and now we're going to do a picot. So if you roll that chain to the side, you want to look for that third stitch coming down, or that third chain right here. So slip stitch into the third chain from your hook, 1 slip stitch, that forms your picot. Wrap your yarn twice and treble crochet into that same space, 1 double crochet, and 1 half double crochet. Just like that. Into the next space, slip stitch to start your leaf, slip stitch, wrap your yarn and 1 half double crochet, 1 double crochet, 1 treble crochet, so wrap your yarn twice, picot, so chain 3, and slip stitch to that very first chain you made, that first back loop right there. So there's our picot. Wrap your yarn twice, 1 treble crochet, 1 double crochet, and 1 half double crochet to finish off our leaf. Just like that. So into the next space, slip stitch to start, half double crochet, double crochet, treble crochet, so wrap your yarn twice, 1 treble crochet, picot, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, And we're going to slip stitch into that very first chain we made right there to join or to make your picot. So slip stitch into that first chain to make your picot. Wrap your yarn twice and one treble crochet into the same space. We're just working down our leaf now. One double crochet and one half double crochet. So now you can pause the video and keep working along, making that leaf into each of these spaces all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back to where we started, we're just going to slip stitch in to the bottom or the beginning of that very first leaf we made. Just slip stitch to join. Chain one to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. Now for our magic ring, in the beginning we have to snug this up as much as we can. We want it really nice and shut and closed. And now sew in this tail. I like using a sharp tip needle because it goes through the fibers instead of around them. And I'm going to follow the direction that my tail came from. I'm just going to keep working it forward about a little more than halfway around my ring. Same direction that it came from. Just like that. And now I'm going to go back opposite direction. All the way around. We don't want this tail coming out. I'm going to go all the way around backwards, forwards again. There. Now we can cut that tail off. We can sew in our last tail, and now we are ready to assemble our flower. So you're going to need your barbecue skewer or your knitting needle, your flower, and your leaf. So starting with your knitting needle or your barbecue skewer, just pop that straight down the center of your flower. Now take your leaf. We want the macaroni facing up in the center and the pretty side of our leaves also facing up. And now just poke our barbecue skewer or your knitting needle right down into the center of that magic ring. And because we made it nice and snug, that is going to really hold up our flower. There, just like that. Now if yours is not snug, or if you did a chain 3 ring to start, you can just take 2 of your little magic loom elastics, wrap it around a couple times on your skewer, just like that, and then slide this up all the way. That will stop your leaves or your flower from sliding down on your skewer also. And there is your super easy crochet flower bouquet. So I hope you enjoyed making your flowers as much as I did. I'm waiting for you in that video right there, and stay hooked.